let's move on to the second quarter. We have some information. The Sterling net point power rankings. Put this together a while back, and it's a purely quantitative way to rank the teams. It's surely going to be a little different from those pundits who, who make their own decisions as to who's number one and number two, because they don't even agree from the guy next to them. So you got 3 or 4 people, most of them don't agree. So that's just the nature of it. So we just have a way to look at it based on a hard code number, and that number is net points. Okay, so we want to show that, and we want to show that year to date, which is how we normally do it, but we're also going to add another part to it, where we're going to show it just for those last 3 weeks, because I want to kind of see who has some momentum going into the final 3 weeks. And as you said, Ben, earlier, come week 15, all the bye weeks are over. The playoff positioning starts in earnest as of week 15. So what's coming out of week 15 is going to clinch stuff for people, and it's going to be that kind of way. But let's take a look and see who's been doing the stomping on whom around here, as they say. We have here the Sterling Pro Football net point power rankings for the NFL. Average net points, which is the ANP column, through week 14. So that's year-to-date numbers. So you have your rankings in yellow, you have your average net points in gray, and then we have those same average net points, but only calculated over the last 3 weeks to see who's been really picking up the pace going into the final 3 weeks of the season. So let's go quickly down 1 through 16, Benny. The New England Patriots are the king of the hill right now, with an annual net points of 11.5. And you think about the rookie quarterback, and you think about them as being a conservative offense, but they've been putting in the points on a few people lately, and their defense is giving up much of nothing. So they're right there. Number 2 is the Buffalo Bills. I think the Buffalo Bills, it's like they're getting hit with jabs, and they're not quite responding to these jabs that they're getting. But they're hanging on to number 2 with a 10.3 average net points. And then you've got the team that, and this is funny, Buffalo is in between the 2 teams that they had to play over the last 2 weeks.
That's interesting.
And I thought it was so interesting, the difference in the types of offense, for example, that Buffalo had to face from week to week. I mean, the stark difference between that cold, snowy Buffalo evening when the Patriots literally threw the ball 3 times and ran the ball sufficiently to get the job done and beat Buffalo. And then they turn around and go to sunny Tampa, where they got the most efficient quarterback with the most efficient passing numbers in the league. And they had to deal with like that the contrast. I just thought that was an amazing contrast to have to deal with.
Well, here's the other thing. They lost both games, okay? The conservative offense of the Patriots, conservative offense, really top flight defense, beat Buffalo 14-10 in the type of game that you would expect from the New England Patriots. Then they go down to Tampa. They lose to the Buccaneers 33-27 in the type of game that you would expect playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's unfortunate for Buffalo that they came out on the losing end on both games, but they played well in both games, as they should. They're number 2 in average net points over the course of the season. But those were 2 big losses for them. Hopefully, those are losses that they learned from, because, you know, you don't have a lot of time to right the ship, as they say, because it's almost time for the playoffs. I'd say they're pretty much a lock. If they don't win the division, they'll come in second in the division, because no other team in the division is going to beat them besides the Patriots. So I'd say they're a lock for the playoffs, but they're going to have to do some work in these last few games to get themselves together if they're going to go deep into the playoffs, as I expected them to do at the beginning of the season. But I don't know now. I mean, I'm still confident. I still like them, but I don't know now. So we'll see.
The Bills, when I'm looking, where are they? I can't see them from where I am in the last 3 weeks. Their average net points.
They're all the way down at number 12.
There you go.
Their average net points are yes, right there, 5.
5. Ranked 12th over the last 3 weeks.
Again, they lost a game by 4, in which they scored 10, and they lost a game by 6 in a game they scored 27 in. So yeah, that's going to take you down.
It's interesting when you look at it from a net point perspective, because again, 2 divergent scoring scenarios, low scoring game, high scoring game. You know what I mean?
Right.
Speaking of high scoring games, average net points over the last 3 weeks, Kansas City Chiefs. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, average net points we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So I know when we get done with this, we're going to start looking at the points for and the points against categories. But off the top of my head, I'd say when I look over at average net points for the entire season, I see them at number 7. And over the last 3 weeks, I see them at number 1. And the first thing that you would say, or most people would think, is Mahomes has got it together. The offense is rolling again. But that's not necessarily the case. That is not necessarily the case. Remember, we're talking about average net points here. I don't think that they're scoring so great that that's what's taking them to victories. Their defense has improved immensely over the last month. It's like night and day from the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. They have really got it together. Part of it is because some guys come back from injury. Part of it is because, and I heard this scenario from, I think, our man Dan Orlovsky, and I agree with it 100%. The defensive coordinator there is Mr. Spagnuolo, whose defenses are known to sometimes take time to gel. And of course, when you have starters that go down with injury, that doesn't help, that slows things down. But he won 2 Super Bowls as the defensive coordinator with the Giants on what people thought were average Giants football teams at best. And they came on late, got hot, and won 2 Super Bowls. And it looks like the Chiefs are doing the same doggone thing. So that's crazy. He's got to get a lot of credit for that. But the Chiefs are keeping their offense on the field by getting teams out of there, 3 and out, punt the ball, go for long field goal, miss it, and turnovers. They got it cranking. Their defense is so much improved that it's making the entire team look better, but they have to get the credit.
Chris Jones, right? D-line?
Yes, sir.
People are talking about him as being one of the top defensive players in the NFL right now, this performance level right now.
I would agree.
Very interesting. And then there you go with New England again. In the last 3 weeks, 17.3. So, I mean, such an improvement. Indianapolis is like, to me, a dark horse. They're there. You can't dismiss them. But I can't say that I'm really looking at them as the Super Bowl contender team. Yeah, it hasn't hasn't happened in my mind. You poo-pooed a little bit about Miami, but over the last 3 weeks, double digits. And then Denver's coming in with your boy Teddy Two Gloves in the top 5. So those
Amazing.
are 2 teams, Miami and Denver, who seem to be getting it together a little bit lately.
Well, to be honest, I've liked the improvement I've seen from Miami, especially defensively, over the course of the second half of the season. I've been talking about Tua. I think Tua's been playing really well, pretty consistently. Not great, but really well, probably better than most people expected, okay? If there's any poo-pooing to be done about Miami, it's just that it's unfortunate that they're in the AFC East, where Buffalo and New England are obviously the kings of the division. So their playoff chances are pretty much rooted in hopefully being a wild card, if that. And 3 teams out of that one division, I don't think that's going to happen, but we shall see.
Well, they're number 6 in last 3 weeks, number 8, 2 of your NFC East teams. Tampa Bay is they're just smooth right now. 8.7 coming in at 7th. I don't feel as if that's, I think they're kind of in cruise control. You look and they might be 7th in the last 3 weeks, but they're number 3 over the year to date. So they're just kind of cruising right now. It's going to be interesting to see. Let's take a quick look, move along, and see the components that make up that net points. So here's your scoring, your average points for year to date, and then your average points for over the last 3 weeks. So here you go, Tampa Bay, where I say they was cruising at number 1 in scoring. Green Bay, look at Green Bay over the last 3 weeks, 37.3. And that's with a bad toe, man.
A fractured pinky toe.
A fractured toe. Look at him. Look at him. Ben, what's up with your Giants, man?
What do you mean?
Last 3 weeks, 30th. The 27th year to date.
Okay.
Oh, you had your boy come in, didn't you? The one you didn't want to play?
Who? What are you talking about?
The Giants on your quarterback.
Daniel Jones is down. They had to play Mike Glennon.
Right. That's when you didn't want him.
No, I don't like Mike Glennon.
I don't like Mike Glennon.
Mike Glennon is a career backup that people have on his team because he's probably good at watching film. and he's been around for a while.
Excellent at watching film, man.
Hey, what do we always say? What's the greatest NFL job you could possibly have for making money and longevity? Backup quarterback.
Woo!
I will praise him for that and that alone. Okay?
There you go.
In fact, there was a question last week as to whether he was going to be able to play. He was a little banged up, and they were getting ready to go to my man Fromm. Forgot his first name. Yeah.
Wow. That's almost like a name from the past.
Yeah. Well, he played at Georgia. Georgia was really good. He played with DeAndre Swift on the same Georgia team. Okay. He got drafted, but I don't know. It remains to be seen if he'll ever be able to prove himself to be a decent NFL quarterback. And in order to do that, he's going to have to get some starts under his belt. But, when you're the number 3 guy, it's kind of tough. I was kind of hoping to see him play. I didn't expect him to win. I mean, let's face it. We're in between rebuilding mode and we can fix this mode, for lack of a better term. So we're kind of stuck in there. So this offseason is going to be pretty big for the Giants. It's New York City, so rebuild is not a word that the fans want to hear. You know what I'm saying? When the Giants fall down, when the Knicks fall down, The fans don't want to hear we're going to rebuild. We'll see you in 3 years. They're like, yo, fix this now.
Well, then they learn from the Sixers. Just trust the process. It's a process.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Speaking of processes, I had kind of said that I thought 28 points was the magic number. You have to for a team to really be competitive.
As far as points for is concerned?
Points for, yeah.
Okay.
My Niners are just a tad below that right now. Over the last 3 weeks, they're 25.3 year to date. So they're putting some points up. I'm a little surprised, but as long as Kittle stays healthy, I feel confident that, you know, we can compete. You know, I even played that game. We'll talk about it in the Bias Plus report, their matchup on the upcoming week. But this is the points for. Just wanted to give people a chance to look at this. And again, remind everybody, this is the Sterling Pro Football Net Point Power Rankings. That's Sterling NPPR on Facebook. And you can find all of these charts and all of this information there, and you can take a closer look at it. Any last things you want to say about the scoring?
Yeah, so let me just see this now. So we got Tampa at number 1, Dallas at number 2, Indy at number 3, Arizona at number 4, the Rams at number 5, and I'll say Buffalo at number 6. All basically hitting the magic number that you said of 28, right?
Okay.
Okay, good. So I just jotted those teams down. Now, along with that magic number, and we're talking about teams going deep in the playoffs and being Super Bowl contenders, right?
Well, yep.
Okay, so we always say you got to have a run game and you got to have a really good to great defense to get to and win a Super Bowl. Now, let's go to points against and see what that list looks like.
Oh, yeah, baby. Defense. See, that's what being Ben played, ladies and germs. We played well, we played offense too, but we played defense on the championship squad. Here's your points against year to date in the gray column, last 3 weeks in the blue column. And again, the rankings by those numbers 1 through 32. Interesting, last 3 weeks, Las Vegas is last. Gee, Christmas. Some of these teams really gave up some points last 3 weeks. But then on the other side, 1 through 10, New England, again, 15 points per game, 15.4. Denver, Buffalo. Okay, Buffalo, you know, they might be losing, but they, you know, they really just got lit up by the Bucks. Arizona, Seattle, average points against. Seattle in the top 5, Benny.
Somehow, I can't think of, well, yeah, I can't figure that one out.
Didn't they play like the Jets or the Giants or somebody recently?
Yeah, but that's 2 games should be enough to get them up that high. Every time I watch them, I'm like, oh my God, this defense is abysmal. Like, what is going on? But then I get distracted watching Russell Wilson play and I go, oh, geez, that's even worse. So maybe they're doing some things on defense I haven't been paying attention to. How they're at number 5, I have no clue, but they're only giving up 20.2 points per game. So what can I say?
Yeah. Last 3 weeks, New England's giving up an average of 7.7 points per game.
That's amazing. Now, of course, the bad weather game helped them.
Bad weather game helped them. And look who's right behind them.
That's great defense right there. That's great defense. And again, Miami. Praised them about their defense last season. That defense is back. Might not win all their games, but you're going to be in a battle with the Dolphins.
Interesting to see who's on this bottom half in terms of giving up points. When you're number 17, you're looking at Cincinnati, the Rams, Tampa Bay, and my Niners. And I know my Niners are, you know, we've had some issues on defense, you know. but you know, we're only 0.6 better than your Giants. I mean, you know, we're right there in the neighborhood with the Giants. But surprising again, the Rams, Cincinnati, and Tampa Bay, supposedly contenders, are not on the top half of this list. Now let's look at it for a second on the last 3 weeks side. Cincinnati, no, it's even worse. Rams, no. Tampa Bay, no. So last 3 weeks, their defense hasn't exactly been bad, but 22.8 points per game when you're scoring, what were they scoring? 37? 30?
I think it was 31, but yeah.
Well, let's just go back. 31.5.
1.5.
There you go.
So
that's your net point right there.
right. So check this out. I'm going to attempt to make a profound statement here.
Oh no.
Okay. So going on the premise that you need to be able to score 28 points plus to be a real bona fide contender. And you threw that number out there, and it might be right, it might be wrong. That's your, that's your opinion. I think it's solid. I think that's solid.
1 touchdown a quarter.
I think that's solid. I'm going to say you need to be able to hold teams to at least 20 or less. Okay? So on the offensive side, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams that fit the criteria. On the defensive side, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams that fit the criteria. The 2 teams, there's only 2 that fit the criteria for both the Arizona Cardinals and the Buffalo Bills. Make a note. If they're in the Super Bowl, make a note. I don't know if they are. I'm not making that prediction. Make a note.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you say that. But when I'm looking at the last 3 weeks, the Cardinals are 14th, and Buffalo is what, 17th? You said, or
that's okay.
So the question is always, who's got the momentum going into the playoffs? Those 2 teams are a little worrisome, even though they played some good ball during the year.
I get it.
I'm very interested to see Arizona come back. They had some issues in their game, including the last play of the game, where the lineman was talking about they thought he was going to down it, but he was in the shotgun. You don't down anything from the shotgun unless you're really trying to be tricky. And that whole thing just didn't go off. And Kyler made some decisions. It's like he thought he could throw a couple passes that he couldn't make. He's like, you're whatever he is, 5'10" or whatever, and you got a short piece of field, and the guy that in between you and your receiver is like 6'5", and you got to throw a teardrop that's not, you don't have that kind of air time to throw no teardrops for a 10, 15-yard pass. So he made some really questionable decisions, and I felt like all of his physical attributes on the plus side, he still has a few on the negative side that it's gonna be interesting to see if he can overcome those in order to be competitive like you're talking about. Again, I keep seeing Indianapolis, Seattle, and Buffalo all at exactly 17.7 points per game. So that's an interesting neighborhood. That's what we always talk about, neighborhoods. So there's a few of your neighborhoods. Feel free, ladies and germs, to go to that. Now, we have something called the Bias Plus Reports, where we take a look at the net points and the next stat, which is average turnover differential and average turnover differential over the last 3 weeks. So we put those numbers together to come up with what we call the Pro Football Bias Plus Report, which we'll talk about in the third quarter of our show. But again, that team that keeps showing itself, Benny, Indianapolis, number one with +1. And again, turnover differential and net points are the two stats where you can have both a positive and a negative number. If you take a look over in the right-hand side, you'll see the negative numbers. What's that? Jacksonville over the last 3 weeks, giving up -2.3, tied with Chicago. So that's not good for Chicago, considering who they got to play this week. But Indianapolis, Green Bay, New England, Arizona. There's your Arizona. Tampa Bay, Buffalo. So there's your top 7. Minnesota's coming in tied with the Rams for 8th and 9th, and then the Chargers at 10th. Tied, that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4-way tie. Chargers, Seattle, Giants, and Cleveland. So my Niners are still on the negative side. They're over in the 20th year to date. Where are they at? I think they're better than that, though, in the last 3 weeks. They're 8th in the last 3 weeks. That's the kind of turnaround that you really like to see, you know, to go from a year-to-date ranking of 20th, but over the last 3 weeks, your ranking is 8th. And that's tied with Cleveland, Miami, and Atlanta. So there you go.
I would say right off the top of my head, number 1, Indianapolis Colts being number 1 is something that I've said this before over the last few weeks, is something that I wouldn't have even thought about because of Carson Wentz and the type of season that he had before he left Philadelphia. But he has protected the ball really, really well. Mr. Taylor is awesome. He does not fumble. Okay. The receivers are shorthanded. They put the ball away. They get down on the ground when they need to. They get out of bounds when they need to. So they're not susceptible to those punch outs that a lot of the D-backs are doing now. And their defense is taking the ball away like crazy. Because, you know, turnover differential, you have to have that combination of your offense holding on to the ball and your defense taking the ball away. And that's what the Colts have. And, you know, when we look at the last 3 weeks, it looks like they dropped down to 10. But let's remember, if I look at this list real quick, I think of all the teams above them, they were the only team that had a bye just this past weekend. So they're 1 game behind all those other teams.
And we are using averages.
Yes.
So that's not as much of a factor.
Not as much of a factor, but if they had played this week and got 2 picks, they wouldn't be at 10. They'd probably be at 3.
It's a hell of an if, but in any event,
it's a fact. They played 1 less game, right? It is a fact.
Yeah, they did, but I'm saying that's why we do the averages so that, you know, no one's cheating.
I don't want anybody that's a Colts fan out there to go, oh my God, last 3 weeks we're playing horrible. Well, that's because you only played 2 of those last 3 weeks. But don't worry about it. We're good. We're good.
I agree with you, though. You know, the turnaround for Carson Wentz led offense to not have the turnovers, for him to play as turnover free as he has played. And I've seen him maybe make 1 or 2 like Carson Wentz from last year type turnovers, but that was only a couple. And, you know, for the most part, he's done great. Having Jonathan Taylor, man, I mean, it just means everything because you control so much of what the defense does by just having him back there, knowing at any moment he could be gone. He could take it. So, yeah, that's a great combination. We really can't look at them, play them off too lightly. Because even when you look at the conferences, well, you know, here in your top 5, you got 3 NFCs, 2 AFCs. And I looked at some of the other stuff, and then some of the NFC looks a little stronger in some of the other areas. But in any event, congratulations to Indianapolis, congratulations to Green Bay and New England. Again, tied with Arizona. Arizona doesn't turn the ball over that much. So to have that 0.8, now again, with the 2 turnovers that Arizona had, it dropped them to 0.7. That's not a big drop, but in terms of the ranking now, you're down in the 10, 11, 12 range as opposed to the top 2, 3, 4. So there you go with turnover differential. Any last words on this?
Just that Kansas City and New England getting 2.7 and 2.3 over the last 3 weeks. That's big. Everybody else is basically the same, 1.7 down to 1. And even the Colts at 0.7, Arizona 0.7, Rams 0.7, Chargers 0.7. They're all kind of in the same little area there, but we got to rank them, you know, so we do.
Right.
2.7 and 2.3, that's outstanding. That is outstanding. And the Colts for the entire year at 1, that's actually borderline outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, they're the only ones that are at that point. Everybody else is a fraction
look at everybody else.
You know, year to date.
Yeah, Green Bay fans are crazy about their team right now. They're happy as hell. Their defense is playing really well. And if you're a Green Bay fan that lives in Philadelphia, every time Rasul Douglas gets an interception, you turn to all your Philadelphia Eagle fans and go, what happened? Because Rasul Douglas is balling.
Balling.
Yeah.
And thinking that, you know, speaking of somebody on defense, you know, Dallas has, you know, the Diggs brother, 0.7, ranked 5th for the year to date, but 1.7 over the last 3. So he's still balling. I don't think he's had his, did he get a pick last week?
I don't think he got a pick last week. I can't quite remember. I watched so many doggone games, man. My head is swimming. But he's done a lot of damage over the season. I believe he has 9 already this season.
Yeah,
I could be off by 1 or 2. I think he's got 9. That's outstanding. 9 interceptions in 1 season. That's outstanding, man.
Yeah.
You know, the haters will say, yeah, but I seen him get burnt like 4, 5, 6 times. Well, yeah, he's a kid. It's going to happen. But he's a ball.
One of the problematic teams that I see on this list is number 29 year average turnovers to date. And over the last 3 weeks, number 29, and that's the Baltimore Ravens.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah. I don't know what to say about Baltimore. I'm very upset. I had Lamar Jackson on a couple of fantasy teams. He comes out, he gets hurt in the first quarter, and he almost sunk me, man. One team I barely held on to make the playoffs, and the other one I think I lost. That hurt me really bad. And he wasn't playing great to begin with. Not as great as I would have wanted him to play, as I expected him to play. And now he's hurt. I don't even know if he's going to be able to go this week. I'll have to see if he makes it to any practices tomorrow and Friday. But Baltimore, but what are you going to do, man? I don't think they have a starter left in their secondary. I believe everybody in their secondary is a backup player. It's hard.
We're going to talk a little bit about some of the results of that and some of these matchups, especially when you start to look at what's happening with COVID, because it's really going to change who hits the field this weekend. But relative to Todd and Todd, any last words?
I'm good with that.
All right, we're going to wrap up the second quarter, ladies and germs.